Hello and welcome. You are watching LockdownTV. It is day 8 of the national lockdown here in the UK. And at UnHerd, we are trying to make use of the wonderful contacts and contributors and editors we have to try and bring a conversation about what's going on during this period and maybe what changes it might or might not bring about. I am delighted to be joined today by Paulina Neuding from Sweden. Not sure if you can see her. And also Johan Anderberg, also from Stockholm. Give us a wave, Johan. So we are here to talk about the Swedish response to the coronavirus threat. We published a piece by me yesterday on UnHerd, which garnered quite a lot of attention, just sort of setting out really what Sweden is doing differently and pointing out how the whole national conversation in Sweden is quite different to here in the UK. So I thought I'd start by just asking, Paulina, what's your experience of what it's like on the ground? I mean, are the sort of characterizations of Sweden is just carrying on as normal? Is that true? What does it feel like to you?
Well, you can see from mobile data that people are mobility in Stockholm, central Stockholm, has decreased by 75%. You can compare that to Copenhagen, which has decreased by 90%. So it's very different from how it usually is. But you can still see people sitting in the crowded bars and restaurants and going out. And it's very different from I think every other city in Europe right now.
Do you feel people are anxious? Is there a sense of anxiety about it?
There is, but I think people haven't realized yet how bad this will get very soon.
Johan, can I bring you in? What's your experience been so far of what the atmosphere like is in Stockholm and how different it is from normal?
Well, it's a lot different from how it normal is, but I think Paulina is right that it looks quite different from Germany or France or even Denmark, I think.
So people are still going out. I mean, do you go to restaurants? Do you go to other friends' house for dinner? What's your life like at the moment?
I would say that there are actually more people in restaurants now than maybe 2 weeks ago, at least where.
Right. Well, why do you think that would be? Because the deaths are only now just beginning to be reported. Why do you
think the death numbers won't be as alarming to people, even though maybe this is when people should become a little bit more afraid?
I think it has to do with Swedish psychology, and that's difference compared to Denmark and Norway. We don't have a recent memory of disaster, and we have this image of Swedish society as this great unsinkable ship. And as long as authorities are telling us that it's safe to go out, people will be going out.
So do you find that in the media or in the kind of national conversation, there is a lot of questioning of the strategy? I mean, you would demand this great sense of pressure. Is that being felt in the media, Paulina?
There is a lot of questioning. Sweden also has this very strong consensus culture. So we tend to follow, even the media, not just the public, but also 15. Sweden took, again, a very extreme position. We took in more refugees than anyone else. And the media were 100% behind the politics for a while before everyone turned. Now it's a bit different. There's more questioning, definitely.
Johan, do you have a similar experience there? I mean, whoever you're following on Twitter or the kind of media outlets you follow, do you think it's a consensus culture, or do you think it's
a pretty good debate? And I think the decisions are going to get better by us having this debate, actually. And I kind of don't agree about people following politics here. It's mostly that they're following what the experts are saying, at least the experts that are that come from like the largest universities and the equivalent of NIH in Sweden.
I mean, we had, if you take the UK situation, 3 or 4 weeks cautious strategy, not locking people down by law, just encouraging this social distancing and taking kind of gradual measures. But even during that period, what was noticeable is because there wasn't consensus among the experts, because you could find experts who disagreed, it became politicized very quickly. And depending on whether you were for or against, you could find voices that supported your opinion. I mean, I know there have been letters to Swedish newspapers and so on from groups of scientists raising concerns. What I find so surprising is that they haven't been kind of seized on by critics and more of a kind of controversy turned into.
There are definitely different opinions among experts in Sweden as well, but we've chosen this one expert who's the chief epidemiologist at the Public Health Agency, and he's been given this role of the expert, and that's where our consensus culture comes in.
But I think it's also about the politicians probably weigh in a lot of different factors here, and I'm kind of the opinion that the measures that other countries are taking are probably more dangerous in the long run, and I kind of hope that that's what they're thinking. And it's kind of hard to forget what we freaked out about 2 years ago or 3 years ago. It was like terrorism, and then it was like something else, and there are so many opportunity costs here associated with school closures, and I think that it's obviously a very fine line to walk here, but I kind of hope that the Swedish government is taking all this into consideration.
So, Johan, just before I come to Paulina, because I know you take a bit of a different view on wisdom of this course, just so I understand your argument, Johan, you feel that the government is placing a lot of weight on what the potential costs of a lockdown could be, both in terms of actual lives. Do you think that it comes down to that and lives lost on both sides, or is it more a sense of kind of quality of life and overall judgments?
Well, I think it's a combination of financial aspects, but also lives in the long run. But I think politicians should also take into consideration the effect of, for example, the school closures. So some countries have had their schools closed for a number of weeks now, and eventually that's going to come up as a cost somewhere else.
Mm. And is that talked about a lot in the media and in the public conversation? The sort of trying to weigh up those costs.
I don't think we're quite there yet. Probably because I don't know if you agree on this, Paulina, but the social distancing and the other measures, it hasn't been that difficult for any citizens so far, I think.
Mm. Paulina,
I think there are two different sides of this, and you have to understand that in Sweden we have this tradition of independent government agencies. So the Public Health Agency has a lot of power here, and the government has been taking cues from the Public Health Agency, and that agency isn't thinking in economic terms, but it takes a very holistic view of public health. So when it's thinking about school closures, for instance, it's taking into account the psychological effects on children of being isolated for a long time. And even equality has come up as a public health issue. So when Spotify, the company Spotify, urged its employees to work from home if possible, it was actually criticized by Anders Tegnell, who said that this is an equality issue. Not everyone can work from home, so we take issue with this. It's a problem from an equality perspective, because from his point of view, equality is a public health concern. Inequality is a public health concern. So they're not thinking in economic terms, but they take a very wide view of what is public health, what public health is.
So actually, I mean, you could argue that it's politics anyway, in a sense. I mean, in the correct sense that, if it's a decision about the whole of society balancing risks against rewards and how to balance the kind of danger to a minority against the other dangers to a majority, it should be a political question. So
it is a political question. So we're talking about equality. We're talking about children who are locked into isolated and abusive homes, and of course those things are political as well.
So, Johan, which direction do you feel this is going in? Because when we spoke a couple of days ago, you felt that there were, if anything, it was more likely to go in the other direction. That there were voices in the financial press talking about the economic cost and urging Sweden to open up. Where do you sense the direction of travel to be?
I guess I think Sweden will probably stay in place for now, but maybe things will change when other countries open up more, because I feel like the other countries in Europe, like their response is pretty much their strategy is equivalent to holding your breath. I mean, it's like a good thing to do for like 2 or 3 seconds, but you can't like keep it up. And probably there has been some talk in Finland opening the schools again, and I guess when Germany and France go that way, probably Sweden will maybe open up the high schools again and maybe the universities. I think they should do it right away, but I guess it's a little bit politically sensitive right now.
So when they
I'll just go to my daughter for a while.
you talk to your daughter. I'm going to go to Paulina for a sec. So which direction do you think it's going to go in, Paulina? Do you take the same view as you are?
So we don't know what's going to happen with the Swedish mortality rate, and I think that's the big question, because there's a lag from you take certain measures, then there's a lag before people are infected or not infected, then there's another few weeks before people die from the disease. So we don't know what's going to happen yet. We don't know the effects of Sweden's measures. So, but if it turns out that we have a considerably higher mortality rate per capita than Denmark and Norway, then I think we might do as we did during the asylum wave, which is panic and turn in the other direction. That's the risk I see.
So let's have a look at a chart that's been doing the rounds on Twitter, which I saw today, which compares the mortality rates, or at least the numbers of deaths in aggregate between Sweden, Denmark and Norway. Hopefully that will be on your screens. Basically, it shows Sweden, what looks like Sweden, taking off in terms of a pandemic, while the other countries the curve seems to be flattening. Have you seen that chart? And Johan, you say you'd like the schools to reopen or the measures to begin to lift. When someone shows you that chart, how can you make that argument?
I can't really see the chart, but I think I got the gist of what you said. Well, I mean, I'm totally aware of the fact that no politician can make this argument, but that's like the beauty of being a writer, that you can kind of think a little bit wider. And it is mostly old people who die, and we have to like put a little bit of weight on that fact, I think. And this is not like the Spanish flu. This is not like any other pandemics that we feared. It's like probably the worst epidemic we've had in a generation. But do we really want to like not just throw the kitchen sink at this, but like throw everything and mortgage like generations into the future? I think the answer is pretty clear. And of course, people are going to die, but there is like no good scenario here, I think. And politicians have to choose the least good one, the least bad one.
Is there a level for you at which you would change your view? I mean, if the epidemic in Sweden really, takes off and hospitals begin to be overwhelmed and the numbers of deaths start being really frightening, would you then, at what point, how high did that bar have to get?
I don't know, but I think at the moment the trade-off is pretty clear, I think. And even though it's probably worse than in Denmark and Norway, or about the same as in Denmark, I would say, there could be like other factors behind this as well.
There's one, just before I come to Paulina, there was one chart that you pointed out to me, which was the numbers of people being admitted into intensive care units on a daily basis that the authorities put out on a daily basis, and that doesn't look to be quite as exponential as the death chart seems. Do you get some comfort from that information? That's for Johan. I don't know if you heard me there, Johan.
Oh, is it for me? Okay, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh yeah. The ICU.
You showed me the other day this chart, which I thought was interesting. I still don't really know what to make of it, but it shows numbers of people being admitted into intensive care, and it seems to be, if anything, flat, possibly even slightly falling off.
Yeah, I mean that looks good, but I don't really base my argument here on the fact the state in Swedish hospitals. I think what we have to have the courage to say is that there are like other values in society than keeping old people from dying at any cost here, and eventually it's going to come down to lives. Anyway, I mean, this is not the economy versus human lives. It's about human lives now versus human lives later.
Okay, Paulina, what's your response to what Johan said? I mean, do you take a different view?
Well, you hear that argument every now and then, that it's only old people, or mainly old people, who die, and they're sort of disposable, and let's look at the costs.
No, I didn't say that they were disposable.
Yeah, but that's the implication, that it's too expensive to keep them alive. And we're talking about people who, I'm not getting into it. Obviously, I think that we should do everything in our mind to save these lives, even if it's mainly elderly people who are affected by this.
So Paulina, what would you like to see happen now?
Again, I'm not an expert. I don't have a plan for how to deal with this, but I wish we took a we were more in line with our other countries and were more careful about this.
Okay. Johan, a final thought from you then.
Well, I understand that this argument sounds like I think that old people are disposable. That's not the thing at all. It's just that when a society has to choose, then it's there is no society that can stop old people from being more vulnerable. And we don't even know if all these measures that France and Germany are taking, if that is the best way to protect the old people. I mean, we don't even have that. What we do know is that for every day that this shutdown continues, it creates problems for so many vulnerable people in society. And I think sooner or later we're going to have to start taking that into account.
Okay, well, thank you both so much for telling us more about what you're seeing and what your thoughts are in Sweden. We will watch it with absolutely fascinated interest, and obviously we hope for the best. Talk to you both very soon.
Thank you, Freddie.
Thank you. That was a special episode of Lockdown TV, which is our pop-up TV channel during these lockdown weeks here at UnHerd. We just had a fascinating conversation with Paulina Neuding and Johan Anderberg from Sweden, who gave us some different perspectives on what to make of their treatment to coronavirus. Thank you so much. We'll be streaming live at 4 p.m. every day. See you tomorrow.
Cool.